Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Check Me. I want to talk about this Alabama shooting situation. You see, new details came out, and I'm gonna do my best to kind of give a rundown of the situation and pretty much show why Darius Miles and Miller actually had to say are innocent, and we just hate to say it. It's pretty much just a situation of two people being scared. So let me break it down from the details that were released, because what we see is Darius Miles did not even shoot the gun. Brandon Miller wasn't even involved in it. He was in a different car as well too. So let's break down what happened and the new details that came. So pretty much on the strip that night, the university strip that night, Darius Miles was in the back of the line with Bradley and Miller, the Alabama basketball players. The line was pretty much packed, but so Miller pretty much decided to leave. Brandon Miller decided to leave and go to a restaurant to eat. That's what his attorney said, and they have proof for that. So then Jamia Harris was also in line with her boyfriend Cedric Johnson and Asia Humphrey. Asia Humphrey was a student at Alabama. So they pretty much kind of, sometimes when people go to clubs, they get close to each other. So they pretty much were in the same area while they're waiting in line. They didn't have, from the video camera, there was no true interaction that they saw between them. The video does show that Humphrey apparently bumped into Bradley a couple times, but there was no real acknowledgement, from anybody because they're standing and their probably backs are probably to them or whatever. So at 12:08, Miles and Bradley entered 12:25 with Davis. Now Davis is the cousin of Darius Miles, who is from Maryland. From Landover, Maryland. He had troubles in Landover, in Maryland. Pretty much where I'm from, and he decided to escape everything. He was on probation in Maryland and live with Darius Miles. Now, his mother wasn't a big fan of it, but they're like a close family. They even have a nickname for him. So he was already inside the club. 6 minutes later, Harris, Johnson, and Mumphrey all go inside the club. Now, in a testimony from February 21st, the February hearing February 21st hearing, Humphrey, the cousin, said that she and Harris and her friends stayed at 12:25 for an hour or two, and there were no problems. Police testified there was no indication of interaction between the groups inside the club, 12:25. Now, when they left the club, Humphrey, the cousin driving, moved the Jeep down the alley behind Huntsville parking lot and made a right on Grace and stopped at the corner of University and Grace to wait for her boyfriend Harris to leave the club. Oh, Harris's boyfriend to leave the club. So Humphrey's in the Jeep. She pretty much parks there and waits for Harris to leave the club. Now at 1:02 a.m., Miles texts Miller asking could he pick him up at 1:10 according to testimony. Miles texts Miller how long are you going to be. So pretty much Miles double texted him, said, hey, when's going to pick him up, how long are you going to be, because that's his ride. No indication of any type of tension or beef at this moment. At 1:36, Davis, Miles, and Bradley left 12:25. So they're at the point they're still in the club. They text them they're leaving the club. They walk across the street. Miles was ahead of them, fiddling his hood on his jacket, and walked past Harris on the Grace Street, on the Jeep on the Grace Street. Now he walked past them. I'm not sure where he was going. Maybe get something to eat or whatever. But there was no indication that he spoke to them. Then Davis stopped. So Miles is ahead. Davis then stopped at the Jeep, began dancing according to court testimony. He told investigators he was drunk off tequila. Bradley was standing a few feet behind him. So they're walking across the street, not paying attention, but Davis stopped, I guess, saw the girls and started dancing. Johnson, the boyfriend, told police that during the initial interaction, he told Davis he was Harris's boyfriend, Jamia Harris's boyfriend, who passed away, and told him to move along. Johnson said Davis responded, "Well, you don't know who I am. You don't know what I do." Humphrey testified she heard Johnson say, "Brother, why don't you be good?" And the only thing she heard was Davis saying, "I don't want your girl." So apparently, he's saying he doesn't want the girl. He was drunk or whatever. Miles returned to the Jeep, right? And Miles' attorney said during that Jaden Bradley is the one that said Darius Miles tried to calm him down. It's his cousin. It's his head case cousin, who he went to move out there with him. So he basically tried to calm him down. Darius says Bradley said Jaden Bradley is the one says Darius Miles tried to calm the situation down, and he got Davis to go. Humphrey testified she didn't hear Miles say anything to anyone in the Jeep. So Miles didn't say anything. He didn't want anybody's girl. From what we were hearing or whatever, what was coming out, it was just a matter of him calming his cousin down. So police testified that during the interaction, either Harris or Humphrey passed something to Johnson in the back seat, right? So Jamea Harris and Humphrey are in the front seat, and then Johnson's in the back seat, right? So that's important because Humphrey's driving and Harris is in the front seat and the boyfriend's in the back seat as they're waiting for him. Johnson told police it was food. Miles told police he saw a gun, right? So Harris and Humphrey passed something to Johnson in the back. So they obviously passed something. Most of the time, people store a gun in the front seat, the glove compartment, their console, somewhere easily accessible in the front seat. Why would you store a gun in the back seat? And why would Johnson be passing something to him? Why would they be passing something to him as they waited for Johnson? Because he was getting some food. So just so you guys know. So at 1:38 a.m., police testified Miles texts Miller again, asking him to bring Miles' gun that some guys were faking. So they're waiting around for Miller to come, and some guys, had a gun. He thinks that he saw a gun. Miles saw a gun. Miles' lawyer Mary Turner said during the hearing that she looked up to reference the term faking, and it meant threatening. It's unclear what Miller saw in the text, if Miller saw the text or whatever. Darius Miles Miller said that her son owned a gun for his protection. As if you know where he's from, in Maryland, it's likely that you get a gun pulled on you. So Miles' attorney said in February 21st hearing that Johnson was upset with Davis dancing near the Jeep and got out of the vehicle, crossed the street, and talked to 3 of his friends. Then Johnson said she got back in. She said got back into the Jeep and drove with the lights off, right? And back into the Jeep and drove with his lights off. So I'm not sure if there's a change in who's driving or whatever, but at this point, it's unclear of who's driving. But he said he drove and he said back into the Jeep and drove with his lights off. An unrelated fight broke out among women blocking this in a traffic area, making it slow to go through the corner of the street. So there was a fight that broke out, and Harris's Jeep still waited behind the alley of Huntstooth with the Huntstooth for another car to turn. So they were still there. At 1:43, Miller's car pulled up behind Bradley's car. Miles stepped out of Bradley's car. So Bradley, who has a car. Harris's Jeep may have left on Grace Street, away from the fight. Right. So Harris's Jeep may have left on Grace Street, away from the fight among women in the alley. The Jeep turned around, lights still off, and pulled up behind Miller's car. So they're directly behind Miller's car. Obviously, there's a beef. Miles saw a gun. Miles then walked back to Miller's car, opened the right passenger door, right, to Miller's car. So now that his car with Davis on the left and rummaging through clothes, according to the testimony, Davis and Miles had an exchange, which one of them said that he is in the hat, and then he asked, is there one in the head? Pretty much, is a gun loaded? Stanbridge said Miller never left his vehicle, never touched a gun, had no idea illegal activity would occur. He cooperated with police fully. Stanbridge said that Tuscaloosa Chief Assistant District Attorney Paul Whitley told AL.com the day of the preliminary hearing there was nothing Miller could be charged for. Miles walked over to his girlfriend, moved her into the alley behind Huntstooth parking lot. He stopped at both Bradley and Miller's cars and then walked down Gray Street. So he obviously put his girl to the side. There was a fight that broke out. He pulled his girl to the side, and then he walked down the street back to their car. Now, I understand this car is behind them with the lights off, which he thought they had a gun. So he stopped by both Bradley and Miller's car. So both Bradley and Miller are parked on Gray Street. Now, his hood is up, and he went by the passenger side of the black Jeep. So the driver's side on the wall and then his hood down after, right? So, he put his hood down once, he walked by. At 1:45 a.m., Davis walked back onto Gray Street into the driver's side of the black Jeep, which was sitting behind Miller's car with the lights off. Now, here's the big thing. Did Davis know that they switched, or who was driving? Because last time Humphrey was driving, the cousin was driving. Almost immediately after Davis approached the side of the car, shots were fired. Darius Miles did not even fire a gun, right? Tuscaloosa police investigator Brandon Culpepper testified February 21st, hearing that Davis fired first into the Jeep, and that Cedric returned fire once Davis started shooting into the Jeep. So what they're saying is Davis, right, went to the Jeep. Apparently, went to the Jeep, maybe thinking that it was Humphrey, and it was Johnson there. He saw him, right? Now, video reviewed by ESPN appears shows Davis falling back before two shots are fired from the Jeep, right? According to testimony, Davis was shot in the shoulder. So Davis is falling back, and then two shots were fired. So my question is, was he shooting in defense? Because this guy may have thought, okay, this guy's coming to get me, and then this guy thought, okay, this guy's coming to get me, and he premeditated. He saw, oh snap, and then he may have shot. He may have fell back because the guy that knew he had a gun, and then there was just a shoot off. It was defense. Police reviewed the multiple 911 calls. So this is the situation. It was basically like both of them were scared, and they just shot, right? And the unfortunate situation is Jamia Harris died, right? But what we're seeing is we don't know what was said in the situation, and Darius Miles never shot. Police reviewed 911 calls about the shooting, and 911 call also came from University Downs. According to testimony, Miles and his girlfriend in her car picked up Davis at an intersection and drove back to the apartment. Miles then called 911 to report a gunshot victim, Michael Davis, so his cousin. So pretty much he may have been just wanting to spend time with his girl, etc. They're still talking with the boys, and people kind of meander around after a club to figure some things out as far as what's the next move or whatever, right? So he wanted to see, what was going on. That's probably why he moved him to the side, etc., to get the car, all these situations. They drove off in her car, and they called police. Why would, I'm just thinking, why would Darius Miles then call the police if he shot somebody, right? Lawyers for Davis and Miles have focused on 3 points within this timeline laid out by the prosecutors. Are focused on 3 things. One, Miles' motive for moving his girlfriend away from the area before the shooting. Who fired his weapon first between Davis and Johnson? Who fired his weapon, right? So this is not even Miles' weapon. I mean, Miles wasn't even shooting. It was Davis who was shooting, and the intent. What was the intent of them shooting? Was it just to back them off, to scare them? Were they shooting? Was there a plan that they were going to shoot them, etc.? Under questioning from prosecutors, Culpepper said Miles moved his girlfriend away from the street, area that shooting happened. Miles' attorney said that Miles was moving his girlfriend away for her to keep her continuing to engage in the fight going among. So people were watching a fight. Hey, stay away from the fight. During the February 21st hearing, in an interview, the defense raised several questions about who shot first. Davis' attorney told ESPN his client will pursue a defense justification. Police testified Miles knew that Davis was going to do that. Miles knew Davis. So police said Miles testified. Police testified Miles knew what Davis was going to do, and it was planned out. But the defense argued testimony that Miles provided Davis a firearm for protection, not to shoot anyone. So they're trying to get Miles for pretty much assisting for capital crime, for a murder or whatever, but for murdering or killing Jamia Harris. And I say it because look, a situation that we thought was this guy got mad at a girl because he didn't get a number or whatever it is. What we're seeing is a situation of pretty much two guys just being scared, and shooting who shot first because they didn't want to die because they were afraid. So I think that we should wait to see what more details are released, because they're still not releasing all details, and there's more investigation before we before we say, oh, you know what, Darius Miles is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and before we say Miller did this, simple situation. I think the boyfriend, I don't understand why they pulled their light, they pulled up behind both cars they knew they had interaction with, and they turned the lights off. I'm not sure what the reason was for that, but what I'm seeing here, simply seeing here is, and this happened in a short period of time of what I discussed. It's not a long period of time, that happened. It happened very quickly. What I'm seeing here is, why would, if you came with everybody in the club, you got something to eat, right? You get back in the car, now you wait around the people you have beef with. I very well think this may have been um, something that I hate to say it, was intimidation on Johnson's part to get these guys because they were acting the fool in front of his car. Now, I don't know what Johnson's history is. I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he's done in the past. I don't know what his, if he has any charges or anything. Davis does have a charge. Now, Cedric Johnson, if I were to, now, Agent Humphrey, the one who's testifying, who testified and whatnot, is a student. Cedric Johnson, if I were to look and see, what, I don't know his history, but it'll be interesting to see what his history is, because it's basically saying he shot first or she shot first, and it happens, sometimes when people, in a situation where they're outmanned, outgunned, they pull out a gun, you know. But videos shown during the hearing showed Johnson driving the Jeep and trying to get back to the University of Blood with their headlights off, right? So he's coming back, and he's coming back, and with their headlights off and a red Malibu occupied by Johnson's friends following close behind. So he had his boys. Johnson had intent to intimidate or do whatever it is to them. So shots rang out from eight. Shots rang out. Four more from a revolver Johnson was carrying, right? So shots rang out from an 8 caliber, a 40 cal by Davis, and then four more from a revolver by Johnson. The prosecution said Davis approached the vehicle, told Johnson, like, I told you I was going to get you, and opened fire. Whatever, right? Robin said this isn't the case. Davis armed himself because he was worried for his safety and returned after Johnson pulled the trigger first. The case is going to go down to who shot first. And it's pretty much, if they can get forensic evidence to see who shot first, that'll be what it is. The first shot, they say the first shot was shot by Cedric. It was throughout. So the case is going to come down to who shot first. It has been our position. It will continue to be our position through the trial, throughout this whole thing, that my client did not shoot first. Robin said, the first shot was shot by Cedric Johnson, and once all the videos are seen, I think they will support the position. So pretty much, Johnson had shot them first, and he provided his cousin with the gun because Johnson got his boys and pretty much picked up behind them. So, they say no matter what proceeded, Harris was struck in the head, and Davis was hit in the shoulder. The second grazed his hip. Fortunately he didn't die. And unfortunately Jamia Harris died. But Johnson drove the Jeep near a place, and then she was pronounced dead. Now I don't know if there was a phone call from. I know they did call police and say she was dead, but what we're pretty much seeing is a stronghold between two people who were intimidated in the situation. But Darius Miles and Miller, Darius Miles was not. He gave his cousin his gun for protection, whatever it is, whatever the situation was. Don't know why he went behind the Jeep. They were changed position. They changed positions during that time period. So we're gonna see what happens in this case, and that, like I said, it's gonna come down to who shot first. But Darius Miles and Miller, I think that mainly Miles, we're gonna see less of a sentence for him as opposed to what we saw in the news, him being cuffed and being walked out.